In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast, it is Passport Prospects Part 2. And in this episode, I'm going to share my thoughts and my personal scouting reports on several of the top international wings in the 2025 NBA Draft. Happy June, which means we are getting closer to the NBA Draft. And big shout out to everyone that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, and I am flying solo today. But don't worry, the team, the Locked On NBA Big Board crew, will be back later on this week. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control over your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And if you are not subscribed to the Locked On NBA Big Boy YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment, and click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode, because it is go time. Like I mentioned, it is June. The NBA Draft is right around the corner. I'm excited. You can probably hear it in my voice, but I'm excited. I've been talking about this 2025 NBA Draft class since August. It's a long time, since August. Right now, I've stopped watching film because I don't want to overanalyze. I don't want to just start nitpicking too much. So I'm just going off of my notes, and I'm trusting my gut 100%. But with that being said, I am excited that this 2025 class is rounding up. And we're just a few weeks away from the draft. I will be in New York. James and I will have some content from Brooklyn. So stick with us. So hit that bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode. All right, let's talk about the top international wings in the 2025 NBA draft class. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background about me and why I'm so excited about this particular episode. So in 2016-17 season, I was living in Istanbul, Turkey, and that's when I decided, you know what, I want to cover the NBA draft. I want this to be what I do for a living. And so during that season, I started my website, NBA Draft Junkies, and I went to my first international scouting event. And I just fell in love with the international game. I fell in love with how different it is from basketball in the United States. I was really intrigued about some of the top international prospects and how they would play if they were in the Nike EYBL, if they played in the Adidas, well, it was called the Adidas Gauntlet at the time, but it is Adidas 3SSB. And then trying to figure out how these international prospects would fare in college and then in the NBA. So I was really intrigued by just the international game. And then I thought, what better way to make a name for myself and just kind of separate myself is by being the American guy that knew the international prospects in and out. So while I really know like the American prospects, you know, whether it's the guys in the EYBL and so on, I think like what really kind of made me stand out a little bit was I knew the international prospects, to the point where people start saying I was biased towards international guys and so on. Definitely not the case, but I do really love scouting internationally. I love going overseas. I love traveling. I love the fact that scouting and basketball allows me to combine like two of the things I'm passionate about. Like I tell people all the time, if I were not covering the NBA draft, what I do for a living, if I didn't have a family, I'd probably be like a photographer for National Geographic. I mean, I don't want to work office job or sit in an office all day. I love being in different cultures. I love basketball. So thankfully, I'm able to combine my two passions. So with that being said, I gave you a little bit of a background because most of these prospects I have actually seen in person with my own eyes. I'm not just watching film. I have seen them with my own eyes. And I think that also has been big for me as far as separating myself from everybody in the draft space that is covering players. And I understand that I probably have a little bit of an advantage because I've been over there. But I've laid my eyes on these prospects. I've seen them multiple times for the most part. And I really enjoy talking about prospects I've seen in person because it just gives me a little bit of a different feel. It creates a different dynamic for it. All right, let's talk about the top wing international prospect, in my opinion, in the 2025 NBA draft, and that is France's Noa Essengue. Essengue is playing for Radio Farm in Germany. Big shout out to Radio Farm One of the things that kind of frustrated me about international basketball was that, and it's one of those things where you have to go over there sometimes to understand the importance of winning and how every game is just pressure packed and a loss feels like the end of the world over there. And most teams are really scared to give developmental minutes to young prospects. And if you've noticed in the past NBA drafts, you find this guy that was really good at the U17s, at FIBA play, really good at the U18s, then he may just disappear because he ends up on the senior club, and now he's like a back-end rotation guy. And the situation that I'm discussing is pretty similar to what Hugo Gonzalez is going through now, and we'll talk about Hugo later on. But Radio Farm is a team in Germany that is not afraid to play their young guys. Killian Hayes was the first guy that I remember that they really gave the keys to, let him play. He ended up being a top 10 pick. Then you also have Juan Nunez last year, who played a significant role for Radio Farm And this year, they're in the playoffs, and they're very competitive. And two of their best players are two young international players in Noa Essengue and Ben Saraf. But before I get into my Noa Essengue scouting report and my view of him from seeing him in person, big shout out to Essengue and Radio Farm yesterday in a semifinal win, a playoff game. He had 22 points, 14 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 block. He was 8 of 16 from the floor. But more importantly, he was 2 of 5 from 3. The outside shooting is the big swing skill for Essengue. And Essengue is a player that I'm really intrigued by. I've had him as a top 10 pick for the majority of this year. On my last big board, I had him at number 8. I think he is the absolute ideal swing for the fences prospect for a team like the Brooklyn Nets, who basically are in a rebuilding mode. What I love about Essengue is that he has excellent positional size and skills. And I've talked about him at length throughout this season. But he's long, he's agile, he's a natural wing at 6'9". He's a good vertical athlete. He can make plays above the rim. He draws a lot of fouls with his activity. That is one of my favorite aspects of his game, is that he's out there. He's not a player that's just too cool for school. He's not a guy that's conservative. He's going to make an impact no matter how many minutes you put him on the floor. He can attack closeouts. He covers a lot of ground with his long strides to the rim. He's skinny but tough. I have this feature that I label guys skinny tough, guys that throw their thin frame around, not afraid to mix it up. Usually when some guys are skinny, they don't like contact, and they prefer to hang out on the perimeter and shoot jump shots. And for Essengue, one of the things that really intrigues me about him is the knock on him is that he's not a shooter, right? He's improving, but that's the big concern, is that he's not like an efficient outside shooter. So he's not an efficient outside shooter, but he's rail thin, but he's still productive. That means he's not afraid to go in the paint. He's not afraid to mix it up, whether it's cutting to the rim, whether it's scoring in transition. He's not shooting transition pull-up threes. Speaking of transition, he's not just a transition finisher. He's what I call a transition playmaker. He is comfortable serving as the transition play starter, which means he's going to grab the rebound and push it, pass it ahead, and then finish the play. But he makes plays for others in the open floor. His motor is probably his best skill set right now. Yes, playing hard and having a motor is a skill, like TJ McConnell said. He can serve as a pick and roll finisher. He does have soft touch around the rim, uses soft touch finishes and floaters. He's efficient in the paint. He shows some promise, especially now. He's showing some promise as a floor spacer. And the thing that is probably going to make him a lottery pick is his potential and upside. Very young. He is the youngest player in the draft, if I'm not mistaken, unless somebody else came out that's younger, but I think he is the youngest player in the draft. Played most of the season, or at least half the season, at 17 years old. Think about that. 17 years old. There are guys that are 17 years old that are 10th graders. There's a problem with that. But with Essengue, 6'9", 195, and he was born on December 18th, which means he barely made the cutoff to be eligible for the 2025 NBA draft. If he were born like 13 days later, he would not be eligible for this draft. So with that being said, the upside, the youth is one of the more intriguing aspects of his game. But I think that he has all the tools to be like this switchy, versatile defender that defends all over the floor. Long arms, his skinniness, that's a word, kind of helps him out because he's able to slither through screens. He's the type of guy that can chase around shooters. If I had to make a comparison, I'm not the best at comparisons, but if I had to make a comparison, I think he could be like this combination of Sean Marion on offense, a guy that can get you 15 to 17 points off of activity and motor and energy. You don't have to run plays for him, but he could also be like a Tayshaun Prince type defender. With that being said, if the jump shot continues to improve, maybe he is Tayshaun with a little bit more offensive pop. And to me, if that is who he is, that is worth a lottery pick. And I have him as number 8 on my big board, and I think he is an excellent choice for the Brooklyn Nets. But he could end up going higher, especially if he has a strong playoff series. You saw it with Bilal Coulibaly a couple years ago. Had a strong run in the playoffs, catapulted up to, I think he was like the 6th or 7th pick in the draft. And so Noa Essengue is my number 1 international wing prospect from the international ranks in the 2025 NBA draft. All right, up next, I'm going to talk about Hugo Gonzalez, one of the biggest wild cards in the 2025 NBA draft. Have you ever checked your bank account and you wondered, where in the world did my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is very, very easy to lose track. But that is where Monarch Money comes in. It is your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, your investments, your spending in one place, and you stop managing your money and you start building wealth. I know I am looking to build generational wealth. And one of the things I like about Monarch Money is that it makes managing money with your partner a lot smoother than it has been in the past. You can track your shared and personal accounts. You can set goals together. You can stay on the same page without all the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, second segment. So I wanted to talk about Hugo Gonzalez. But before I switch on to Hugo, I want to mention that I really love going to Adidas Next Generation tournaments. And from going to the Adidas Next Generation tournaments, I've seen Zachary Risacher. I've seen pretty much a lot of the top international players over the last few years. I saw Essengue at a tournament in Dubai where he had like 33 points and 17 rebounds. I mean, just had an absolute monster performance against a team from Lithuania called Zalgiris, a powerhouse in Lithuania. And Hugo Gonzalez is a player that I have not actually seen play in an Adidas Next Generation tournament. I've seen him play in multiple tournaments, but I haven't seen him in an ANGT. And the first time I saw Hugo was at a tournament in Bassano, Italy. This was back in 2022. I was told Real Madrid was going to be there, Barcelona, I want to say Bayern Munich. There's a few other European powerhouses or European clubs that will have their youth team in attendance. So I came into the tournament wanting to see Hugo Gonzalez. I had been hearing about him for a couple years. He was the top-rated player, according to some publications, in the 2006 generation in Europe. So this was my opportunity to check him out. And the tournament actually ended up being better than I expected. Dame Sarr, who's committed to Duke, played in that tournament. That was my first time seeing him. There's another kid named Tifeng Diawara that was playing for Orange One Bassano. He just committed to Syracuse. And then you had, I can't think of the kid's name right now. Ismaila Johnny. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. He's on Gonzaga's roster. But the main attraction for me was Hugo Gonzalez. And what caught my attention with Gonzalez was he played extremely hard. You talk about balls to the wall, that was Hugo Gonzalez. He stood out because he played harder than everyone else. He was physically more mature. This was the U16 tournament. He looked like he was 18 or 19, but he just played extremely hard, knew how to play the right way, made all the right connective passes. I'm skipping ahead here. I went to a Real Madrid game in 2023, and I went to their practice facility. I went to tour their facility. They have this massive like poster that covers the wall, and it has like this picture of all the players in the Real Madrid system. So it has their senior team and their youth team all in one photo. So I mean, you see like Sergio Yui, you see like these guys that are like in their mid-30s, and in the same picture you have little kids. And Luka Doncic was in this particular picture. So I think Luka was like 17 or 18. And then Hugo Gonzalez was in this picture. He may have been like 8. I don't know. I mean, I'm just guessing. Maybe he was 11. But it was very interesting to see this picture. So with that being said, Gonzalez has been in Real Madrid's system for a long time. So you know that he knows how to play the right way. He's a good connective passer, good athlete, and he just dominated this particular tournament just off sheer energy, athleticism, hustle, determination. Got to the foul line an incredible amount of times, but he struggled with his outside shooting, missed a lot of his free throws, didn't make a lot of threes. He was very, very passionate, sometimes like too passionate. Matter of fact, he got ejected from the championship game, but he was someone that was intriguing to me. And I started really, really tracking him and following him because I wanted to see like how it translates up. He was a top player by most scouting services, the top player in the 2006 generation. But I wondered, once people started to catch up with him physically, would he have the same advantages? And Gonzalez is just a rough situation playing for Real Madrid. His minutes are sporadic. He's playing behind some veterans, some guys that are stars in Europe. He's playing behind some guys that are former NBA players. So he's not going to, or he hasn't had consistent opportunities to show why he's so highly touted. And I know like scouting young players in Europe on these really good senior teams it's absolutely brutal. I mean, I'm independent. So when I go to Europe, I'm going on my own dime. And I remember there was a player that I went to scout, Tristan Vujicic, I think that's his name. Watched him play in Madrid. He got in with like 6 seconds left in the second quarter. So somebody wouldn't pick up a foul. He got in one possession, got up a 3. End of the first half, didn't get in the rest of the game. So imagine how difficult that is. So with that being said, Hugo Gonzalez is a big wild card. Like Essengue, teams are not going to be able to get him to their facility to work him out. Some teams are going to go to Germany and work him out. I'm not for sure if that's the case with Gonzalez, but it's a difficult situation for NBA teams when you're going to draft a guy high who you haven't had in your building. You haven't had your whole staff watch him in person or get a chance to interview him. You got to bring some people out to Europe. So could be somewhat of a tough eval. But here are my notes on Gonzalez. He's a good wing passer, good ball mover, very aggressive, loves to attack closeouts. He's an aggressive slasher and driver. He's fearless. He's tough and competitive. Good athlete in the open floor. Gets his fair share of in-game dunks. He's not one of these guys that's just jumping out the gym during warm-ups and is athletic, but it doesn't translate to in-game dunks. He prefers to attack the rim over shooting jumpers. He's a competitive defender. He has active hands. I do think that defense is probably the skill set that would probably get him on the floor early in his NBA career because you know he's going to play hard. He's the type of guy that is fearless. You can put him on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Luka Doncic or LeBron. Yes, he's going to have his struggles, but he's going to go out there and he's going to compete and he's going to at least be a pest and an irritant. So that is something I like about him. I feel like he's an active cutter. He's a good transition finisher. He loves to sprint the floor and is an excellent rebounder from the wing position. But the concerns I've had about Gonzalez and I've had these concerns for, I guess, 3 or 4 years now, is the outside shooting. Very inconsistent outside shooter, streaky shooter at best. At best, you could label him a streaky shooter. But with that being said, it's really tough if you're a streaky shooter to actually be streaky if you're not getting consistent minutes. I don't think Gonzalez is the guy that you can bring him off the bench ice cold and he's in the corner, and the first time he touches the ball is an open catch and shoot three. I think that's not putting him in the best position to succeed. He struggled shooting free throws in the past. He has the tendency to play out of control. He's so aggressive and so determined to get to the rack. He picks up some unnecessary charges, and I think he needs to add a little bit more pace to his game, and that is where sometimes his aggressiveness gets the best of him. But overall, I like Hugo Gonzalez. I think he's a first-round pick. I do know that it is very difficult for NBA teams to evaluate him, especially this year, and I just think it's got to be like gut-wrenching for Gonzalez in the sense that Yegor Demon, Kasparas Jakachonis, even Noa Essengue, Ben Saraf, all these guys are getting the opportunity to play while his minutes have just been up and down, especially when he was considered the better prospect out of the 2006 generation just a few years ago. But overall, I like Hugo Gonzalez. I think he's worthy of a first-round pick. The Brooklyn Nets have 4 first-round picks. I mean, I figure you take a swing on a guy like Gonzalez, and maybe, who knows, maybe the Nets will take 2 international wings in Gonzalez and Noa Essengue. All right, up next, I want to round out this episode by talking about a few other international wings in Noah Penda, Alex Toohey, and Ben Henshall. All right, last segment. Let's talk about French prospect Noah Penda. Now, I'll admit, I am not as high on Penda. I know there's some people that think he's a first-round pick. He's had a really good breakout year this year playing in France. I'm not 100% sold, but I could be wrong. That's one thing about me. If you don't like me or you don't like my analysis, that's fine. But one thing that's consistent is that I am not afraid to express my opinion. And if I'm wrong about a guy, I'm wrong. I'm not afraid to be wrong. But sometimes when I'm watching film or watching games on prospects, it is like listening to a song. So the first few minutes can determine how much I like a guy. And I'm trying to break that human element of it. So I try to like watch guys and try to enter with a clean slate or whatever. But Penda is a guy that I'm just not as high on as the consensus. I'll explain why, but I'll explain why I think that there are people that really like him. Penda, to me, is like a 3-4. He's listed at 6'8", 225 pounds. So he has the frame to be able to play both positions. Strong frame, sneaky athlete. Like his body type doesn't scream athlete, and it's not like crazy explosive, but he's a very sneaky athlete. Kind of like Paul Pierce, sneaky athlete. Kind of little doughy, not really like quick twitchy, but at the same time they'll dunk on you. Like Paul Pierce has some bodies on his resume. If you Google like Paul Pierce dunks, you'd be surprised how many people that Paul Pierce has dunked on. But Penda has that sneaky type of athleticism. He has really good feel as a low post scorer. I feel like he's a natural 4. He's best playing the 4 position, but he's also a good cutter. But I really like when he's operating out of the low post. He has good footwork and post moves, but he does have some wing skills. When he has a mismatch, he takes smaller guys to the block. And then if there's a situation where there's a smaller guy on him and he can't beat him off the dribble, he knows how to turn that into a post up. And then he loves to turn those post situations into easy assists, because when he gets doubled, he has the feel and vision to be able to make high level reads. He had a positive assist to turnover ratio at the under 19s. The concerns are, again, sneaky athlete, not necessarily explosive, may not have the foot speed to defend smaller wings. He's a below the rim finisher in the half court. He has a tendency to slash into traffic and he's just not a good shooter from three. He had a stretch of games this year where it looked like he was improving, but overall, he's still shooting about 30% from three this year. So he's going to have to improve as a shooter. And the way that he plays, I think he's going to be a connective player, a good connective piece is if he's able to stick in the NBA. But I think his outside shooting is going to be the skill set, the swing skill that will allow him to stick in the league. All right, the next player I want to talk about is Alex Toohey. Alex Toohey is a guy that I haven't really been high on either. I don't know what is the skill set that Toohey can hang his hat on consistently in the NBA. He's a good athlete, but I don't think he's like a great athlete. He plays hard. He has the size to be like your combo forward, but he doesn't necessarily shoot the ball at a high level. He started off his career where he committed to Gonzaga and then decided to decided to go play in Australia. He's had some good moments. Like there was the NBL Blitz early in the season, and he just had like a ridiculous stretch of games at the NBL Blitz. I knew it wasn't sustainable, but it was like he was shooting like 75% from three and 66% from the floor. And I thought, okay, maybe like my concerns about him as a shooter, maybe, I need to pump the brakes on him. Maybe he is a lot better shooter. Maybe he turned the corner. Then the regular season happened, and while the shooting numbers weren't bad, 34% from three, he still shot around 74% from the line. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. He averaged 11 points, 3.8 rebounds, and 1.3 assists playing for the Sydney Kings in Australia's top league. It's just something about Toohey that I can't put my finger on as far as like what is his role in the NBA. Maybe he's like an energetic back-end rotation defender. He did average about 2 stocks per game in about 23 minutes playing in Australia. Again, good athlete, not a great athlete. He is physical. Australia is a physical league. And speaking of like the athleticism, if you Google it, I forgot when it was, but it was probably like early in the season. He had a nasty poster dunk on a guy. So he's a good athlete, but he had some athletic advantages in the NBL. I don't think he'll have those same athletic advantages in the NBA, but the swing skill for him is definitely the outside shooting. If he can become a reliable outside shooter, it will open up everything else. Then the last player I want to talk about is fellow Australian Ben Henshall. Henshall was the player I first became aware of at the G League Fall Invitational. It was last season, not this past season, but it was the last year of the G League Ignite, and basically it was an invitational where Matas Buzelis, Ron Holland, and those guys went up against Alex Sarr. It was Alex Sarr's coming out party, and he was able to ride that momentum that he showed in that game. I mean, that was the best I've ever seen Alex Sarr play. But he was able to ride that momentum for a whole season to be the number 2 pick in the 2024 NBA draft coming out of Australia. His teammate for Perth was Ben Henshall. And Ben Henshall was one of the guys that a lot of NBA scouts that were in attendance were kind of raving about, caught everybody by surprise. Nobody that I've spoken with knew him or had him on their radar. He has some big moments. He's a good athlete. He's tough. He's competitive. He shows flashes as a shooter. He was at the NBA Combine last month. I didn't think he had a bad combine, but I don't think he stood out or he popped. If there anything that caught my attention about his play at the Combine was he wasn't passing. I don't want to say he was playing selfish, but I feel like he was playing like, I have something to prove. I know this setting is not a setting for me to not be aggressive, so I'm going to be aggressive to show that I can play. And I felt like he wasn't really himself. Again, I thought that he just shot the ball. He looked for a shot a little bit too much, but I get it. The NBA Combine is one of those settings where if you're playing the right way, you're consistently playing the right way, the ball may not swing back to you. And I feel like Henshall came in with the mindset of, I got to be aggressive, I got to attack, and I got to show teams that I can play. I don't know if he really helped himself at the Combine. I've heard rumors that he possibly could be going to Florida to be with his buddy Alex Condon. So who knows? He has until June 15th to decide. But I think that Henshall is a player that, even though the 2025 NBA draft has thinned out, I think it is in his best interest to either return to Australia or play college basketball. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast, where I talked about the top international wings in the 2025 NBA draft class. Stay tuned, because in the next episode, I'm going to talk about the top ball handlers, playmakers, point guards, or guards. I mean, these positions are just so difficult to label somebody as a point guard, shooting guard. I'm just calling them ball handlers. But I'm going to talk about the top ball handlers from the international ranks in the 2025 NBA class. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe, and I am